Oh, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So Friday afternoon here in sunny England for once. I can't believe it's actually sunny here in March, but I'm loving it. And this weekend is going to be a jam-packed weekend. I've actually been approached about 3-4 weeks ago from a chap called Luke, who wants me to come to his house and help him aquascape his aquarium. So Luke has actually got some fantastic material for the aquarium. He's got some beautiful hardscape, some amazing plants, and he just needs a bit of guidance, how to sort of set up his aquarium, what kind of layout we're going to create. But I've had a lot of things in mind after speaking to Luke for the last 3-4 weeks. So tomorrow I'm actually going to be driving up and we're going to be creating something so beautiful. And I cannot wait to show you guys what we create. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please stick to the end of the video and see what it looks like and leave me a comment down below. And I'll see you on the next one. So I've just arrived here today at Luke's house and I'm very excited about creating an aquascape here in this Aquascaper 600. So this measures 60 centimeters long, 50 centimeters deep and also 36 centimeters high. It's such a stunning tank and it's got a lot of sentimental value to me, to be honest with you. This was actually my first ever aquarium I set up when I started my aquascaping journey about 4 or 5 years ago. So bringing it back feels like a real throwback to the humble beginnings. So let's talk about the lighting we're going to be using. So we're going to be using the Chihiros Vivid 2, and honestly, this thing is such a powerhouse. It's got a full spectrum RGB, and it really does bring out the colours in the plants. Reds are going to look super rich, greens are going to pop, and everything just looks alive. Plus, it's got plenty of power, so there's no worries about getting good growth across the whole tank. But what's really nice, this was actually one of the first proper lights I used when I got into aquascaping. Back then, it blew my mind actually how much difference good lighting makes. And I've been a big fan of it ever since. So using it again for this setup just feels right. It's going to make the Scape look awesome. So for this Scape, I've been chatting with Luke and we both decided on a classic Nature Aquarium layout. We're going to be going for a beautiful twin island style Scape, and the plan is to plant very heavily and densely with some stunning aquatic plants that I've carefully selected for this tank. Now let's get started and let's get right into it. So as you guys can see, Luke has already filled up some crushed lava rock inside some zip tie bags, which is very helpful. I think Luke was getting a little bit impatient. I've waited a couple of weeks for me to actually turn up today to help him aquascape his aquarium. So he wanted to help, but, I'm not complaining. It's definitely time consuming putting this lava rock inside these zip tie bags. So big shout out to Luke for, starting with the aquarium and hopefully he's going to enjoy what we create today. So first off, start with the Millennium Stone. Now, Millennium Stone is a beautiful rock. It's got some really great textured details down the side of it, and we're going to be using this as the base, and we'll be gluing different parts of hardscape, different woods, to sort of create that height initially. So Luke picked up 2 awesome pieces of mangrove wood from Aquarium Gardens, and they've got some really nice texture to them, great grooves and crevices, and they're perfect for epiphyte plants. So the plan is to position them as 2 separate islands, making them fit together just right to create that classic Nature Aquarium look. Mangrove wood is actually very similar to river wood, which I've used loads before in the past, and I have a good idea of how it's going to behave inside the Scape. To add even more detail and height, we've got a bunch of hornwood, which is purchased from Horizon Aquatics. We build off the main structure with these pieces to give more depth and make everything feel more natural. I think one of the main things I need to realise when aquascaping for someone who's a beginner is to make sure all the equipment actually fits inside the aquarium. But I didn't want to give a maintenance nightmare to Luke, so here he is, handing me over the inlet skimmer to see where it fits next to this piece of wood. Luke and I have been chatting before he came over, picking out some great pieces over a video call, so I already had a rough idea what we were working with today. Now it's just about bringing it all together. This is the part I enjoy the most, building up the hardscape and adding those little details that really bring it to life. It's super satisfying, but also can be a bit of a challenge. But we've cut some smaller pieces down, and now it's about finding that perfect balance between both sides of the islands. This is also where I start thinking about planting. Which plants will work best in which area, and where I want to keep those epiphytes to sit, and how everything will grow in over time. It's like piecing together a puzzle, but with nature. Alright, so the right hand side is looking pretty good now, but I need to start thinking about the left. I'm really liking this piece of wood coming down to the front corner. It adds a nice bit of depth and really good flow to the Scape. However, Jack, you need to start thinking about the maintenance. Luke's going to absolutely kill me if he's not able to clean the front of the glass, so I need to start thinking about how I'm going to make it more natural and how Luke can actually clean the glass later on. but I'll probably tweak it a little bit and try and keep things a bit more practical for Luke. Next up, I've got these amazing pieces of Manzanita that I recently got shipped from California, but you may have seen them in my last aquarium setup on my 60p. I'll leave the link description down below and you can see this wood being used in full action on my 60p. But I decided to bring Luke a little surprise and bring him some of these beautiful rare pieces to use inside his tank. There goes Luke again, trying to use the inlet and the outlet and making sure that it still fits inside the aquarium. Don't worry, I've got it covered. So it's time to start gluing these pieces on the left hand side and all the detailing pieces we've just added of the Manzanita wood. The problem is, if you don't glue them now and you decide to keep building off what you're already building, you're going to forget about it, and also it's going to be a bit problematic trying to get your hands in these tiny gaps to try and actually glue things together. But so far so good. I'm really happy with what we're actually creating so far. As you can see, we've got a nice balance on the left and the right hand side. So let's get to work. As we're going to be using sand in the foreground, I really want to be using detailing pieces of wood coming off the two main structures. As you can see, it's all about trying to follow the lines of the branches and of the bigger piece of the wood. But using this Manzanita, it makes it so easy. You know, every piece, in my opinion, just looks good. It really does work with anything, and also it gives a nice contrast between the two colours. I think one thing you have to be mindful of when you're trying to create something like this Aquascape that we're doing today, because it's using a lot of different detailing pieces of wood, you have to make sure you have enough glue. So I just want to say a big shout out to Moss. Moss is actually a glue company here in England that actually sells some great super glue, and he actually supported us by sending us a couple of lovely bottles of glue to use for this aquarium. But we were running low. Luke was on the panic, but you know, we're going to start gluing everything together, and hopefully we've got enough glue to get to the end of the video. One of my favourite things about aquascaping is detailing. I cannot stress enough how much detailing with gravels and different size rocks and pebbles can really transform your aquascape. So today we're going to be using the Weo elderly gravel, and this is also like river pebbles, which look very, very nice next to this Millennium Stone and really naturalistic. So cannot wait to do this. Also, a lot of the gravel is going to be acting as an anchor, especially when I add the soil in the background for the stem plants. One thing I always tell beginners is don't stress about making all your sands and gravels match. In nature, you never see one uniform grain size. There's always a mix of fine and coarse textures blending together, and that's what makes it more natural. Over the last few years, I've kind of learnt this myself by using different shades and different textures of material, and by grading the substrate, using coarser grains in certain areas and finer ones next to them, you can create a much more realistic and visually interesting layout. It also helps to add depth, gives the scape a more organic feel, and just makes everything look a bit more natural. Alright guys, it's planting time. Today we've got some beautiful freshly picked plants from Aquarium Gardens, straight after their latest Tropica delivery. As you know, I'm a huge fan of Tropica and they sponsored me in the past on many of my builds. But today my mate Luke has picked out some fantastic plants and we're going to work together to get them inside the aquarium. Before we dive in, I had a chat with Luke about what plants he really wanted to use, and I shared some of my recommendations. So first up, we'll be planting from the back right of the tank and also the back left. We're starting with some stem plants. So as for the back corners, we'll be using Rotala Blood Red. This plant is a real showstopper with its deep red hues, and it's going to be creating a beautiful contrast against the lush greens of the other plants. Now, when planting the Rotala Blood Red, we want to space them out a bit so they have a bit of room to grow. These stem plants can get pretty bushy, so we're giving them enough space to thrive and develop that rich red colour. Plus, they do best with highlight, so I'm excited to see how they're going to fill in over time, especially with the Chihiros Vivid 2. So, now we've got the Rotala Blood Red in place, it's time to add another stunning species right next to it. So this one's called Rotala HR. It's got the gorgeous deep hue of orange, which will complement the rich red tones of the blood red. I know that a lot of people find that Rotala HR tends to lean more towards red in their tanks, especially they're not adding nitrates in the water column. But without these extra nutrients, the plants can lose some of its orange vibrancy and take on more of a redder tone. But with a little extra care and the right conditions, I'm sure that we can get that deep orange, even red, that we're looking for. But I'm positioning these right next to the blood red, so we have a beautiful gradient effect from the orange to the red as they grow. It's going to create a nice flow of colour in the back corners of the tank, adding depth and richness. Next, we're moving on to the back middle of the tank, and I'm going to be adding some pearlweed. Its Latin name is Heliomanthius macanthomoides, if I pronounce that correct. But this plant grows incredibly quick. It's just like its name suggests, it's perfect for the early stages of the aquarium. Now, pearlweed is great for fighting off those initial algae issues we often face when setting up a new tank. Since it grows so rapidly, it helps outcompete algae for nutrients and light, giving the tank a much better chance of success in those early weeks. But once it's established, you can easily prune it into a nice neat shape, and it can provide a beautiful, lush mid-ground sort of background plant that softens the look of the tank. I'm excited to see how it fills in and creates that full, vibrant middle section. Now, moving on to the next step, we're adding some of my most favourite plants in the hobby, Bulbitis. This is known as the African water fern. This plant is going to be going in the mid-section of the tank, and to make sure it fits to the scale of the aquascape, I've pruned off some of the larger leaves. So, next to it, I'm going to be adding some mini trident fern, which adds a lovely contrast and texture. It's a bit more delicate and compact, so it pairs perfectly with the bold look of the Bulbitis. Together, these two plants will create a stunning balance. The Bulbitis with its bold, elongated leaves, and the mini trident fern with its finer, more intricate leaves. But yeah, both of these plants are timeless in the hobby, and this really brings that jungle nature style to the aquascape that I want to create today. Next, we're going to add in some more epiphyte plants. So we added in some Monte Carlo. Now, Monte Carlo is very much known for a carpeting plant, but most people don't know, but you can actually use this as an epiphyte plant. You can be growing it on wood or rocks, and it can create that creeping down, like the trailing effect, and it looks amazing. So we're going to be using this on various different parts of the wood. Also going to be using some hydrocotyl Tropica, if that's how you pronounce it. God, my Latin's terrible. But this is going to be very unique, and it's going to be growing slightly above the water line, and that way it's going to have that lovely immersed growth. So when we were actually aquascaping this tank together, we had Luke's partner, his girlfriend, actually observing and watching us. But the funny thing was, Luke's gone out and bought this great big water sprayer for the plants, you know, especially when we're planting, you know, making sure they don't dry out. But it was very overkill, and, you know, beginner mindset, that sort of thing. And we found it all hilarious, to be honest with you. But you can see Luke, he's very much enjoying spraying the plants as they're going in with his new toy. So guys, that wraps up this aquarium build today. Along with the main plants, we also use some other beauties such as Pinida feeder, Anubias mini coin, and a few different species of Bucephalandra. I'll make sure I leave a full list of all the plants we use in the description down below. But now, for the final touches, we're going to be adding some Christmas moss and some Ricardia. Before filling up the tank, Luke will be doing daily water changes for the next couple of weeks and holding off on fertilisation until about week 3 or 4. He's also planning to add some Amano shrimp to help keep things clean. But stick around to the end of the video and I'll show you how this tank looks after 1 week. And of course, this video wouldn't be the same without Luke towards the end, spraying his plants like mad again. He literally just couldn't help himself. I love it. So a massive thank you to Luke and his partner Georgia for letting me come round and completely turn the house upside down. Sorry for the mess, but honestly, this was such a cool experience for me. I'm looking forward to seeing how this aquarium evolves over the next few months. If you guys are interested, maybe I'll do a follow-up video in 3 months' time to check the progress. But I hope you guys enjoyed this build as much as I did. Let me know in the comments if you like the setup and drop your fish recommendations for Luke's new aquarium. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up, subscribe for future videos, and I'll see you on the next one.